Hello and welcome. My name is JodieLynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary conversations about everyday life topics.
Yes, we sure do. And today we're talking about the Fae. This is where our souls originated, mine and Heather's. That was our first iteration for our soul was in the fairy realm. So we're going to be talking more about what other elements are in there, how that, connects to the world that we live in here. We're going to share some more cool stuff with you. And that at the very end, we have channeled some messages and will continue to channel some messages from the Queen Fairy.
I don't know if this is an ordinary life topic, but it's ordinary in our world. So I think that we should totally do it.
Yeah, I think it's relative. I mean, when you start dipping into spirituality, you start to realize that there's so much beyond the eye that you cannot see, but that still exists. And for me, that's given me a world of hope and excitement and this tapping into this new realm of possibility, because there's things that I didn't think were possible that I'm starting to see, like fairies.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
amazing.
it's really fantastic when you start looking into this and you start really exploring what is actually out there. It's amazing how there's so much more to the experience of living on the earth plane
Mhm.
than just what meets the eye. We all drive cars or bicycles or motorcycles or whatever. We all live in houses or apartments or, some form of a fancy box, and we all kind of do the same things being human. But when you look beyond that and you actually look at the earth, the soil, the plants, the bugs, the animals, all of the different species that are here. One of the things that get overlooked oftentimes are the elementals. And I know that we've talked about elementals or kind of touched on them here and there along the way in some of our previous episodes, but just so that our viewers know, the elementals that we're going to primarily be talking about today are going to be fairies. But, I want to touch on some of the other elementals that maybe we don't think about, like gnomes and elves and pixies and
Trolls.
sprites, trolls. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Well, why don't we dive in there? I think that you've just named a bunch of the elementals, but let's dig in right there.
Well, so fairies, okay, fairies they're earth elements, or not earth elements, excuse me. They are air elements. So being that they are like of the air, this is why they have wings, so that they can fly, so that they can move throughout the air. This is like their whole thing, right? And so they are on the ground, but they're bird's eye view and can move from place to place very quickly because of their form of built-in transportation. Whereas the earth elements like gnomes and elves and pixies or sprites and
Pixies
trolls,
don't have wings.
they don't have wings. They don't have wings. They're kind of like little people, like little tiny people. So,
Whoa.
yeah. So, and it's funny because, when we were channeling some of this information, we channeled that, fairies have kind of gotten a bad rap for being troublemakers.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is absolutely hilarious because I don't know how many times like I lose my keys, I lose my this, I lose my that. And I have a high fairy population around me all the time. So it seems like that's the likely culprit, but we stand corrected. In fact, it is the pixies and sprites that do it.
Yes. They like to play, they're troublemakers. They are like teenagers. There's a specific word that the being that we were channeling used, but I can't remember. Something teenagers.
Errant,
Yes.
errant teenagers. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So I don't think that this means that they're malicious. They're just a little bit of
Pranksters.
troublemakers. Yeah. They like to
Mhm.
have fun and they like to play. And elves, this is something interesting. I didn't know this, but elves are like the handymen.
Amazing.
Yeah. They go around like
Mhm.
fixing things and creating things, which is really cool. And then gnomes are the record keepers.
Mhm. And
Fantastic.
engineers.
And engineers. Yeah,
I mean, who
absolutely.
knew?
Yes, and also another misunderstood is trolls. Um, they are like the bankers. They trade and barter, clean house, and keep the land safe from threats like predators. Hmm,
Who knew?
who knew? It makes me wonder. Like I always look at things through a different lens. Like, what is mainstream media, or what is the mainstream narrative teaching me about something, and try and see a distortion if there is a distortion in there. I'm kind of just aware of that, and the first thing that pops up in my mind is that trolls are are typically viewed as the ones under the bridge and you shall not pass, but from like this scary place. and
Right.
and what if that's just them, keeping the house in check?
Exactly. I mean, if they're guardians tasked with keeping things safe and tidy,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but when I clean house, I like it to keep tidy afterwards.
Right.
And when it's not, I'm kind of like, why? Why is there grass on my floor?
Yeah,
My inner troll comes out.
that's right. Oh man. So let's talk about how they relate to our planet. Like, why are these elementals important, and they're still here today, right?
Right. Right. They are here today. And the thing is that they're still working. It's still business as usual. They're kind of like the custodians, of the planet. And I think that, if when we talk about like taking care of the earth, and helping our planet and things like this, we're not just doing it for us and our kids and our grandkids and great grandkids. We're doing it for the elementals too. We're doing it for all of the other species that live on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And, for them to take so much care for the earth and for us to just tromp all over it, without any regard to them is kind of rude,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It's
Yeah.
just rude.
It's just rude, but we've never been taught about these things in, school, or, I mean, there's angels in some religions and spirituality, but there's no fairies. Like, that's just Disney movie stuff, you know?
Right. Right. And, when we were channeling, about this, when you think about a fairy, you think about like, is it an insect? Is it a tiny human? Like, what is it? Right? Because they have a very, at least how it's been portrayed on in Disney, Tinkerbell,
Mhm.
she was an adorable little um, lady with a little green dress and some wings, and she was just adorable, right?
Mhm.
Everybody loves Tinkerbell because she's so damn cute. And she's like a little flying human. But when we were channeling what actually is a fairy, are you an insect? Are you a human? What are you? What we got was that they fall between humanity and the angelic realm. So, as a species, they're actually further advanced than humanity.
Mhm.
They're basically like, if I had to kind of sum up what I was getting in that moment of channeling that, is that they are kind of like tiny angels incarnate.
Yeah. No, totally. That's a great way to put it. I think you hit the head on the nail there. Cute
Mhm.
little little tiny little like, angel humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like they came to have like a full experience of the earth plane.
Mhm.
You know, they came here to be one with the earth and rely and depend on the earth to provide for them, but have the physical human experience to some degree in, you know, like in coupling, in, you know, procreation, you know, some of these things that we experience as humans, yet still having the connection, the ability to vibrationally feel and move energy
Mhm.
and decipher and interpret energy as an angel would, you know, in the other density realm. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of like a super cool like experience to get to have. I think everybody should sign up for the fairy realm. You know?
Yeah. You can fly.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's
Speaking
so
of
cool.
speaking of flying, one of the things that we, you know, we asked Jodie was we asked like, okay, well, if I am a fairy in another timeline, you know, if I've got this past life, you know, of fairydom, fairying, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
how come I spent so much of my life this time being afraid of heights? Like, why
Hmm.
is that? And what did she say? She said, it's because after you were a fairy, you had multiple lifetimes afterwards where you thought you could fly, and it
Hmm.
resulted in your death. So your soul remembers, oh, last time she jumped off that ledge, it didn't work out for us so well. Let's
Yeah,
try and
it's
keep
scary
her
up
from doing
here.
that.
You don't have
Exactly.
your wings. You don't have your
Exactly.
wings. What I thought was fascinating, one of the questions that we were asking is just about their life and reincarnation and stuff like that. And they start out, fairies start out like human babies. Like they say, we didn't ask about like gestation period and like birthing and that kind of stuff, but they start as babies. And oftentimes the fairies will like rear their child, I guess you could say, the baby in a human's home so that they are surrounded by said humans and they learn service to humans. What?
I know.
Wow.
I
Amazing.
know.
And something else that they were talking about too, is that they didn't say that fairies aren't everywhere, but I would assume that that's the case. That there's places that they do not exist throughout the world, or there could be potentially, but they're set up in terms of like habitation where they reside. The forest would be like what we have as cities, and then their, I guess that would be like their, our rural is their urban and our urban is their rural, meaning that they don't populate or tend to populate in big cities or in cities. It's mostly surrounding areas. Not that they aren't there, they're just less populated out there. Think about, these small towns and farms and, land upon land upon land. There's not very many people living out there. That's kind of what it's like in terms of the city for the fairies. They like water, they like grass, they like open airy spaces, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, you think about like if you have a yard
Mhm.
where you live in your house and you have mushrooms that pop up in your grass, what's the first thing that we do as a human? We go out there and we pull those things out of the ground, right? And, you know, it has me just totally looking at things completely differently. Like, I don't want to pull out the mushrooms now that I know that there could be fairies living out there. Just
Mhm.
because I live in a city doesn't mean they don't live here, you
Mhm.
know? One of the things that has been very interesting to me is pretty much every psychic, every intuitive teacher has always commented on the large number of fairies that are around me at any given time, which I find hilarious because I love fairies. There's just something about them that's so special. You know, I've always loved them ever since I was a little girl. And I know now that it's because I'm part of that realm. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, one of the things that was always like articulated was always provide them with water. They need to have a source of water, which I find really interesting because as a human who was a fairy, I'm always drawn to water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when we bought the house that we're living in, I was like, oh my God, there's no swimming pool and everything is so flat and there's like no trees anywhere. I mean, there's some trees, but there's not like, you know, it's just really flat. Right. And when we were kind of looking, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so far away from the water. What am I going to do? And then I turned around and looked, and there's this huge water reservoir lake thing, right? I think it's really to catch the runoff. That's, you know, I think they're just trying to make it be a lake that way, but it has a fountain that lights up at night. And at nighttime, I'm like, oh, that's so pretty. I love that so much. And now I totally get it. I totally get it. So, you know, if you are wanting to cultivate your fairy garden, it's a real thing. It's a real
Mhm.
thing, and they appreciate it. You know, put things in it that, you know, fairies would like water, you know, plants, let the mushrooms grow. You know, really like the water, though, is a really important thing. And they really like light, kind of like an
Mm.
insect.
Mm. Incredible.
Mhm.
Yes. So you were talking about, Heather, that when you first started, maybe not first started seeing like psychics, but when you worked with different people who are intuitive in different ways, they've seen them on you. You know, they've seen them around you so much so that one person said you were too busy to look at because of all of
Yeah.
the fairies. Have you seen them?
I have not personally seen them except in the shower. I do see them in the
Mm.
shower. And, you know, at first I thought my eyeballs were going bad. Like I went to the eye doctor and I'm like, I think I've got retinal detachment. You
Yeah.
know, I've been Googling Dr. Google, and I think that this is what is wrong with me. And, you know, many, many eye exams later, I'm just insane because there's nothing wrong with my eyes.
Yeah.
So how I see them when I'm in the shower is it always comes at the end of my shower. Sometimes I'll see them during the shower, but it really comes mostly at the end of the shower. And how I see them are little, um, like little flurries of light around me, like little,
Oh.
almost like lightning bugs,
Yeah.
you know, but like these little flurries of light. And it's like I just see them like kind of flash and blink, and the way that they move is very like weird. You know, they don't like float by, you know, they're not like, hey girl, you know, nothing like that. Right. They're
Hey,
like, you know,
girl.
they're kind of like right. And so this kind of like flurry of activity, and I see it like here in my peripheral. And so this is why I was thinking I was having retinal detachment, because when you have that, you also see light out here, and it comes as like this, like sort of like
Mm.
just blinking lights, right? And so, but there's nothing wrong with my eyes, right? Other than the fact that I'm blind. But besides that, I will even see them if I'm not wearing my contacts. They get that close that it's like I can still see them, which is amazing because
Yes.
without my glasses, I'm like this far away, right? So that is my like personal, like in the moment experience with them. I haven't really had much outside of that. Now, that said, I did record a video at Christmas time when Quinn and I first started dating. We had our first Christmas together, and he was unwrapping presents. And there was something about the way that the light was shining. There were all these little beings flying around, and the way that they were flying around, it wasn't dust, it wasn't a light reflection. It absolutely had to be the fairies. It had to be, because it was fun, it was upbeat, there was so much good energy, and that's when they really show up, is when there's just an abundance of happiness.
Ooh, cool. I have not seen them personally, but I remember I was in my brokerage business. I was taking an individual, a gentleman, to be field trained, is what we call it. So we take them on appointments and stuff like that. So we were going to visit somebody that he knew, to talk to them about their finances. And we got into this huge conversation. And this is the beginning, not necessarily the beginning of my spiritual journey, but where I'd really started to open up to other things like elementals. I was open to the possibility. So we start talking, and it turns out this lady is a Reiki master and a healer, and she was talking about her room that she does it in, and how there's always orbs in there, and she's going on and on. She's got a like a motion sensor camera inside of there, so it records so much stuff. And then she was like, but if you really want to see something crazy, you should see this video. And they had a camera outside their house that was motion sensor, and she asked for the fairies to show themselves on the camera, and sure enough, they recorded a picture of a fairy coming in and then flittering away. It just blew my freaking mind. So we actually have some footage that we're going to share. It's not ours, but we're going to talk about that for those of you that are, having trouble grasping seeing fairies or whatever. We're going to show you. Heather, are you ready for that?
Sure. Yeah. Let me just get it all lined up here. While I do this, I'm going to tell you a story that I heard just this morning from my mother-in-law.
Yes.
It was absolutely hilarious. So this is what is so fun about like how the earth communicates with you, and how like the elementals, and just how the things, just this communication is always happening, right? She has this big piece of property, and there's a tree that's way out on the edge of the property. And this tree that's way out on the edge of the property, she would walk by it. And as she would walk by it, she would hear water. And she's like, oh gosh, I need to water that. I need to water that. It needs some water. I need to water that. And she'd be lazy, and she'd, I'll get to it later, and then she'd walk back by it again, and it'd be like, water. She's like, oh God, I need to water that. But it's like an ordeal to water this tree. It's way down there. She has to daisy chain multiple hoses to get it all the way down there. She's like, okay, I'll get the water. I'll get the water. So she goes up finally after like the third time of it going, water. She walks by. She goes up, she gets the hose, daisy chains it, drags it all the way down there, hooks it up. She's standing there watering the tree. And then she hears, not me, you. Boom. Oh, man, so fun. So fun.
Not me, you. Oh man.
Exactly.
And that's something that we had channeled. And I'm gonna, while you're teeing up this video, is that fairies truly believe that what they give, they will receive. And we were asking them about things that they wished to, like information or wisdom that they'd like to, provide for humanity. And that was one of the things that they wished for, was that more humans would understand that what you give is equal to what you will receive. This beautiful, cyclical relationship of, or symbiotic. Is it symbiotic?
Symbiotic, I think.
Symbiotic. Yeah. It's just this give and take, this beautiful give and take. Yeah.
Okay. So let me see if I can share screen. Yes, I can. Yeah. So I'm going to do this without audio so that we can talk over it if we wish. And we'll just kind of do them in succession. So here is some very fun video footage of fairies. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Now, this was sent to us from a dear friend, and we will talk more about that friend in a moment, but here we go.
Oh, are you seeing it? That? Oh.
Here it is.
It's like freaking Tinkerbell showed up.
Amazing.
That is
And look,
so
it just
cool.
vanishes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we want to break this down, someone would say, oh, this could be a reflection, right? It is until you see the wings, and then you see it floating off, and it's way too far away now to still be creating this light cast, right?
Yeah.
So this one, I went ahead and froze it so that we could actually see it here. I'm going to back it up a little bit so we can actually see it come in for its close-up. What did we decide? 17, 16?
I think it was 17, but go to 16. Yeah, that's perfect. Oh, there it is. I've watched this video so many times preparing for today, and every time I'm like, whoa. Mm-hmm. I love
now,
it.
These are captured on people's Ring cameras. So like, this is just right here on YouTube. I searched fairy on camera, like it was super easy to find. So this video is a little bit longer. The guy has this whole long thing that he talks about, like, how he captured this. And then you see, the fairy come into the frame, and then you see it leave. But this is where he actually slowed it down. And so we're going to show you the slowed down version so that you can watch it in slow-mo.
Oh, there it is. Oh, you can see it's like little legs too.
Mm-hmm. I think actually one kind of zooms past here too. Let's see. If we back that up, let's just look one more time. I forget where this starts. I think it says slow down on the screen. There we go. All right. So we're going to watch it come around this way. And then I think another one kind of goes bloop right here down in the bottom of the screen.
Oh. And it's got this beautiful like blue. Oh, yeah, there it was. Oh, amazing. My gosh. Yeah. That is amazing. I think it's so cool. So if you've got cameras outside, maybe ask to see a fairy on your camera.
Yeah, totally. And they're always around. So, just say, hey, I'm putting up this camera. I would like to see somebody on it. Fairies. Mm-hmm. So just so that our viewers don't think that we are complete and total whack jobs, I want to share this photo of our dear friend Melinda, who is actually on this show.
Yeah, episode 32, How Your Witch Wound is Holding You Back, just in case any of you forgot, but you can see that she was on our show. So this is a live person that we know and that you guys have seen if you've been following our show for a while now.
Exactly. She's also the one who sent us the paper lantern taking off. She also sent us this video. So here we are. This is Melinda's picture. Here is her beautiful face. Here is a fairy here along this left side.
Look at the top first.
But let's look at,
scroll down.
Oh, the top.
Go back up. Right on the right side of her head, you can see the wing coming out at the top.
Oh, right.
Right.
Here's another one right here. And the thing that I've noticed about all the fairy video footage that I've been watching in preparation for this, because it's fun, is that they all seem to have very similar little tendrily things that kind of come off of them like this. I don't know if it's fabric, like their clothing, or if it's just like their magic, whatever it is. It's really super cool. So if we scroll down here, this is the one that gets me. This guy right here. You can see the wings. You can see the body and the leg with the foot. You can see the head here. This whole part is the head. You can see the eyes. You can see her or his nose and the pointy chin and the neck.
Wow.
So rad, right?
And before you, okay. In the corner, just to the left of that fairy is another fairy, it looks like sitting. like sitting all
Mm-hmm.
like hunched.
Mm-hmm. This was like a
Cool.
fairy extravaganza in her selfie. It's
Yep.
amazing.
We, for the record, as we were preparing for this show, I kept taking selfies of Heather and I to see if any fairies would show up. So be on the lookout for any fairies that do show up, because we didn't see any in our pictures yet, but who knows? They might just fly in and you might catch it live.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be so fun?
Oh,
So
so
fun.
amazing. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Well, you were talking a little bit earlier about the story that you heard this morning, and how that individual, I can't remember if you said who it was basically hearing from a tree, water,
Mm-hmm.
water. Why does that happen, Heather? Like, how is it because this individual originated in the fairy realm or spent time in the fairy realm in one of their lifetimes that they just have this connection, or what's going on there?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible. The thing is that she does spiritual work, right? So she's very in tune with the planet and its inhabitants. I don't know if I've ever really looked into whether or not she's part of the fairy realm. So I'm not going to say that she is, but just knowing her the way that I do, she's very connected to the earth. Very connected. She's connected to the earth. She's connected to the animals. All of her plants are very important to her. I mean, she's very, very like earthly. And so I think that I suspect that she probably did originate or spend a good deal of time in the fairy realm. She has her physical appearance is also quite small. She's very thin. She has a like fun, um, like personality. So, she likes to have fun. She likes to laugh. She's not all serious business all the time. And
Mhm.
so, she's just really like, she's a tiny human. And so it wouldn't surprise me if she, spent time there. So, yeah, I mean, it
Mm.
just doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's amazing. Well, and I like how you're talking about, being that connected to nature, because I think there's a lot that we can learn. You think about just how our ecosystem operates and how it is self-sustaining in itself, just like our own bodies are. Um, we can learn a lot from that cohabitation between all of its parts, and how they all work together and how they lift one another up. I think that's just beautiful. So, hey, trees, if you've got a message for me, I'm listening. I think it's so cool that the message had nothing to do with the tree. It had something to do with the individual.
Right.
That's
Well, and
so amazing.
if she has been or is part of the fairy realm or has spent time in the fairy realm, of course the tree is going to tell her she needs water, that she's dehydrated,
Mhm.
because that's how that whole like experience is in that realm, right? It's the earth communicating to the occupants and the occupants responding and communicating to the earth. And so it's very much, this, back and forth communication. And it's really magical. There was I think it was on Netflix. It was a mushroom movie. It was like a documentary kind of thing. I think it was like The Amazing World of Fungi or something like that, right? And it talked about how like mushrooms have this really elaborate system to communicate with each other, and they will communicate miles and miles away with each other.
Wow.
And so I have a sneaky suspicion that this is why when you see a lot of imagery around fairies, there's also mushrooms involved, because they're like an information superhighway below the surface of the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So, they've got their little roots down in there, and their root systems are all intertwined with every other root system. And so they're sending messages back and forth, oh, hey, over here, there's better water. And oh, hey, and so, oh, predators are coming, as these guys are getting ripped out of the soil by us. These ones over here going, God, they're coming, So like it wouldn't surprise me if that's really a legit thing, that the fungus that lives on the planet is utilized by fairies, even so, just to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
It's their
Hmm.
telephone.
So crazy. If you guys are liking this conversation, make sure that you click that like button and that you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. Just a shameless plug there. If you've got some questions, throw them into the chat. We're going to talk about some of the things that we channeled earlier today.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Ooh, let's jump in. Okay, so something I didn't know that we channeled is there is a queen fairy. There is one that resides over the entire realm, and she's the one that was chatting with us today. And that was, I'm not sure if I was supposed to mention this or not, but that was a different experience for you to channel because it's a living being, and you're channeling. Our assumption was the living being being the queen fairy, her higher self, and having that conversation today. So that's cool. She's 232 years old. 232 years old. That's difficult to say. That's a long time. And basically it sounded like she's just waiting for whatever succession plan there is for the next elder to take their place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it sounded to me that the way that it works from her perspective is it is kind of like, like a queendom. You have the reigning queen, let's say, and when she passes on, her heir takes over. But what I thought was interesting and what we were channeling about that succession plan is that the heir is not actually like born to her.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't necessarily deliver the heir.
No, it's just
That it
whoever's
could come
marked.
from anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what she said was that they were marked, like their wings were marked. And when they came back into the realm and reincarnated as a fairy, when they were born, their wings were basically tattooed, like your next heir, whatever.
Right, exactly. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting that she was saying was that um that the heir, we're going to call him the heir because we don't really have a term for it, right? It's the elder that's going to take over the fairy realm. um the child is raised by the whole, like, village, the whole realm, because the heir has to be not only spiritually the elder, but also has to understand every facet related to the realm and the running of the realm and everything realm related, just like a queen or like a monarch would, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's was super fascinating to see, like, a similarity in that area as we do in other areas, even in, like, spirituality. God runs the realm, the
Yep.
existence of all things, right? So I thought that was really, like, kind of cool.
Yeah.
you know
That's fascinating.
it kind of reminds me of oh man, I hope I don't butcher this on live YouTube, but the isn't it the Dalai Lama? The Dalai Lama, like, the new Dalai Lama has, like, they get, like, tested or something, and it's like it has to be like the soul reincarnate comes back in as the Dalai Lama. And please, if somebody's watching this and I'm wrong, correct me. But because this is all, like, in my head that I remember from eons ago. But if I understand it right, the Dalai Lama always comes in reincarnate, right? And so there's certain, like, parameters and tests and whatever to prove that this soul incarnate is in fact the Dalai Lama. And
Mm.
so I think it's really interesting that the soul that comes in to be the next in line to run the fairy realm is a soul that not only came, birthed first time into the fairy realm, went out and had experiences in all other species, and then came back in for their final lifetime into the fairy realm to run the fairy realm.
Well, and we didn't talk about that. They had told us, or the queen had told us that those who originally incarnated inside of the fairy realm first would do that. That they would go on and could live in different places. Some of them stay; they never left the fairy realm. But their last iteration or incarnation would be back into the fairy realm to be an elder of some kind or to take over that the queendom.
Amazing.
Fascinating.
So
Yeah.
cool.
So cool. So their job that they were telling us is to go out and assist, to go out and protect. They go out and assist injured plants and insects and sometimes birds, even though birds can be a foe sometimes because they'll eat them. But the ones that they do protect or revive back to health, they understand that the exchange will then be them becoming their ally or their protector for life. And something else that they also told us was that sometimes when birds swoop down at you, and try and deter you from being in whatever area, it's not always because they have the nest. Sometimes it's because there's a fairy population nearby and they're afraid, so they're protecting the fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's
Amazing.
really cool to think about, these different ecosystems working together, that these like birds are like, you saved my life when I was young, and I remember that. And I vow to protect you always for keeping me safe. Like, what a beautiful exchange.
Right? So beautiful. Yeah. And they were talking about the symbiotic relationship. That's what they call it, between air, earth, and water. And we also noticed that the fire wasn't in there, the fourth element. What did they say about that, Heather?
Well, fire is the enemy for them. Fire is not something that benefits them really in any way. So, when one of the things that she was talking about was, fire can, wipe out their habitat. They, when they are talking about like the machines coming to like deforest,
Mhm.
they're not upset about the machines. The machines came because of the fire. It's the fire that runs the machine. And it's interesting that they
Mm.
know that. Like,
Yeah.
here
Well,
is a
it makes
species that
sense.
lives in the wild, and they know that combustion engines run those tractors.
Mhm.
What?
Well, it makes sense if they are from an evolutionary perspective further advanced because they're in between the angelic realm and I think you said human realm, right? Between the
Right,
two.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that does make sense then. Yeah,
Yeah. Because they would have this
amazing.
tapped in knowledge um, that is far superior. Wow.
Mhm.
It's fantastic. And they can live for a really, really long time. Like this queen, she's lived for 230 some odd years. Like, so she saw them make first tractor, probably. I don't know how old tractors
Probably.
are, but that's a
Yeah.
completely different world. Wow. That's amazing. One thing that they had said that I wrote down was that going back to what they give, they will receive. That is something that is known in the fairy realm. They truly believe that what they give, they will receive, and humans can learn from that. And she had said some humans know this already, and they create places for their fairies. And you kind of alluded to that already today, Heather, but maybe we can get some more insight on, how we can make their environment safer, more special, enticing, make them happier. I don't know. I would like to see more fairies around and make sure that they're taken care of. So what do? We just, build a box and call it a fairy house, or what?
Wouldn't it be wonderful if it were just that easy?
Yeah,
Well, they're
totally.
not pets.
Oh,
So, I think, building them a box and call it a fairy house might be a bit wishful thinking for them to move in. But I think that the thing that attracts them outside of, maybe you having a garden of some kind, give them some vegetation, give them some water, access to water. Like, they have to have water, right? They're living beings. All living beings require water in some capacity. So if you don't have water, they're probably not hanging out at your house. So, having water is, a big thing, but, providing them with, some landscape your yard. If you don't have a yard, make a little garden, even a wall garden. There are gardens that reside on walls. And if you have a fountain next to a wall garden, you might have some fairy population that move in.
Oh, I love wall gardens.
Mm-hmm. But the real thing that attracts them is joy. Because like attracts like. That whole saying of misery loves company. Well, it goes the other way too. If you are, a happy person, and you are living, your life from a place of joy, and you're living in finding ways to be joyful, that is going to attract them to you, because your vibrational frequency is going to be sending out, I am joyful, I am happy, I am fun. Which I think I kind of am joyful, happy, and fun. I have my curmudgeon moments, believe me, but for as a person, I'd say that I'm joyful, happy, and fun. And so it doesn't surprise me that there's so many of them that, my friend's fairy expert could not look at me.
They just love being around you.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, when we were channeling, I had asked a little bit about the land that my husband and I live on. And there is some fairies, but way less than I thought there would be. I thought this place would be like full of fairies, because it's just, there's water, there's vegetation, that's, whatever, right? There's nothing else really out here except for us and animals and plants. But they said, because our property is a building property, like a place where we grow stuff to feed people, and we're building a family and a home and all of these things, that we actually have a lot of, what was it, elves and gnomes on our property, which is super cool. Maybe you could ask for me selfishly, because no one else has asked a question. But I mean, for those other elementals, is there, ways that we could make their environment better for them as well? Like, can I go out for a walk to my lake and build, I don't know, a gnome rock house statue, something?
Yeah. So she's talking about your property specifically. And so just so everybody is clear on who I'm channeling, because I'm really big on knowing who you're channeling. I am channeling the high self to the fairy realm queen that we were speaking with earlier. So, which is super cool, because I've never done this before. Well, I mean, until today, actually, to be completely transparent. But anyway, she one of the things that we already talked about was the something with the nitrogen, right? And we discussed that offline. But she is talking about creating some like shelter type of things. There's not a lot of like rock formation where you are. A lot of it, she's saying, has been kind of like cleared out to make way for your like building. And so she is saying that, you know, for them, they would appreciate, you know, maybe some like larger rocks. She's showing me like kind of like boulder size, not like, you know, something the size of a crystal, but like actual rocks. She says this gives them shelter when it rains, when it snows, that kind of thing. She says that that the fairy population on your land actually increases in the springtime through the summer, but that many of them leave for favorable weather. That's funny, kind of like birds.
Yeah.
They migrate south for the winter.
I wonder if they hop a trip, like a hop on all of the geese. So we have a giant lake in our backyard. It's on our property. It's 40 acres ish, somewhere in there, and it extends to the other individual's property next door. So this lake is really big, maybe 80 acres in length. I don't know, in width. Anyway, it's giant. And it's just like naturally occurring. It was there when we bought the property. And but in the summertime, it's so interesting because a bunch of geese, you know, the Canadian geese, they come and they take over the lake, and you can hear them talking at night. It's just wild how loud they are. Like they have parties on the lake every single night. It's crazy. So I wonder if the fairies hitch a ride on, you know, the geese, or if they fly with them.
She's saying that not all of them leave. There are some that stay behind because work still needs to be tended to. But she says that she's kind of chuckling, and she says, no, they don't transport and they don't fly together, but they do move in migration. She says that they travel around 100 miles a day. 100 miles a day, that's quite a distance. That's quite a distance.
That's crazy. I have one last question about that, and then we'll go to Vicky, because you know this isn't all about me. But you know, my husband and I went to the garden yesterday or the day before, and we have this old granary shed that obviously we don't use. It was just on the property. And as we were going past, and this is dropping in right now, Nate said to me, oh, the ghosts, or he said something like that, must be gone because the door is closed. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, it depends on the day, but the door to the granary will either be open or it will be closed and like locked. And it just the weirdest things. I wonder if that's actually like gnomes, or I don't know, something else.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah.
We should do a little land investigation for you. Yeah.
Fun.
Like really connect in and see what we got. Okay, so Vicky was asking about what elementals are on her property. So she's talking about she says that you have a very good mix of all of the elementals on your property. And I've been to Vicky's property, so I know the property fairly well. She says that that your fairy population is up closer to the house. And so they tend to stay kind of in like the rose garden. Do you have a rose garden that I never noticed? I don't know if she's talking about the rose garden. That your fairies tend to hang around the rose garden, and they hang around up towards the house because of the pool. And but she is relaying a message about a fountain that is not being utilized, or something. Was it disconnected? I know you guys had a fountain going at once, but she is bringing up the fountain, and she's saying that the fairies around you are real helpers, and sometimes will distract like birds and things from coming in and picking off, like your bunnies and things like that when you're out there feeding the bunnies with the carrots and stuff. So she says that they run interference quite frequently for you. And so you should definitely thank them for that. So yeah, you definitely have a whole team there. She says that you've really cultivated a nice, lovely environment. You have a lot of, wow, she's really going now. You have a lot of like trolls and gnomes that are in the slope that is beyond the boulders. So you've got the boulders and then you've got that big slope. She's talking about them all being down in there. So there you go. It's a elemental extravaganza at Vicky's house.
That's so cool.
Super cool.
Kat is asking, I don't know if we can answer this question, but she's asking if she has fairies around her.
She says that the way that your like property is, that there's actually a dispute between like property owners, like the owners of like elemental owners. So it's interesting because the plots of land have, and I actually was told this morning, and it was verified that there is like owners of the land that are like landlord like fairies. And so we validated this morning when Jodie and I were preparing for this episode. And apparently, Kat, at your particular location, there is a disagreement over who actually has like claim to the land. So they are there, but until the land gets settled, they have vacated the area. So, but there are trolls that are there in full force bartering the land deal. So, how funny.
Wow.
So, I don't know, start looking under the rocks, I guess.
Start looking under the rocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
This was such a fun episode. Like, I was super jazzed about doing it. And I realized that, anybody who doesn't know us or me would think that we are totally wackadoodle for doing a topic like this, but they are real, they exist. And I think it's really fun to know that, there's a whole nother like world conspiring for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, supporting you, lifting you up, running interference. I think it's so amazing. And we're channels, so we're right out there, Heather. I don't think us talking about fairies is much off the cuff
True.
of where we are normally. So it's
True.
amazing. I hope you guys have all enjoyed this episode. We're so glad that you're here. Please click that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed, because we are super close to getting our own like handle so that we are discoverable on YouTube. So definitely tell all of your friends to subscribe, and make sure you join us back here next week. We're talking about Who.Is reality check. We all know that we are multi-dimensional beings. We've talked about, all of these elementals. We know that we're not alone, and we know that we're connected to it all. But we're going to dive into how your soul is a vital piece of this bigger puzzle, unique and different and exceptionally important to the entirety of the whole thing. So we're going to talk about all of that and how you create your reality. We are diving into that next week. Thanks again for joining us today. And we just want to wish you lots of love on your journeys throughout the week.
Thank you for joining.
Bye.